Hello and welcome once again to Ignite Your Impact. My name is Jen Rhodes. It is a beautiful day in Kansas City. I am seated next to Matt Rhodes.
Hello. It's a great day in Kansas City today.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I do not want to be inside, which will not be the case for much longer because when we wrap, I'm going to go lay in the grass. Haven't decided if I'm going to keep my clothes on or not.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
The HOA won't like that, but
They're used to me. Or are they? So I'm sure if you saw the title of this episode, Why You Are Not Seeing Results, you may be thinking that because we're online coaches that we're going to talk about fitness. And you're partially correct, but fitness is the easiest thing for us to parallel. Obviously, it's one of the easiest goals to hit, right? We've talked about that in the past. Some of our longest transformations were only 6 to 9 months. So in the terms of goal setting and goal achieving, it's a fairly short-term goal. And that's why I like using it to parallel, because if you are basing effort on time, it's an easy one to use. But when we say that when you get your fitness right, everything else becomes so much more clear and so much more effortless. There's so much truth to it. And this is going to make even more sense as we dive in today. And yes, setting goals, having your vision, relentlessly focusing on all of that. That's the first step. 100%. We've talked about this so much. But there's something else that's super important. And I'm going to let Matt get into a lot more of the finite details. But taking massive action comes from that. But even after doing all of this, there may be a reason you're still not seeing some results in the areas of your life.
yeah, you can, as we've talked about, have that vision, have that massive action. But if you're not doing some of the other things, some of the right tactics, that may be slowing you down. So knowing the type of people that are attracted to us and listen to us, I kind of want to walk through what a day, a week, or maybe even a month might look for them in a different vertical. So on a daily basis, if you're a business owner, you're measuring your cash flow. Could be business or even personal if you don't own a business, but most people have somewhere where they're measuring that, whether it's their checking account, their savings account, their credit card spending, whatever it is. So you're looking to see where you're at on those specific things, and you're tracking and you're measuring it, and you do this in business, and it becomes almost a daily thing. Mm-hmm. And then on a weekly basis, you're probably looking at KPIs. Whatever the KPIs are for your industry. If you're in sales, you're probably looking at leads, appointments, closes, all those different ratios. You know, if you're in a different industry, you may be looking at products produced in a week's time frame. Even if you are a school teacher, you could be looking at papers graded in a week. Whatever it is, you have KPIs that you measure. Key
performance indicators for those that are like, what's a KPI?
Yeah, things that you're measuring that are key performance indicators. That's it right
a KPI.
There. And then at month end, you're assessing where everything sits. Where's the profit and loss at? Where do we need to make adjustments for next month, maybe next quarter? Where can we be more efficient? Essentially, where can we make more money in most realms? And sometimes it's even if you're in a job, you know, I got to make sure I put food on the table. So I need to assess what I'm doing, what I've done this last month, and what I need to do the next month. And that is the type of measurements and the things that go into running a business. And even in life, like I said, it doesn't have to be a business. There are key performance indicators that you're looking at to see how you're performing, and you're measuring those things.
Yeah. And even just relating it back to fitness, you know, there's key performance indicators. Let's relate it to parenting. I mean, how many times have you checked in with your kid? Mentally, emotionally, physically, right? Like in the busy days, I would go sometimes 24 hours without seeing their eyeballs. And I've started making that like, I just would like to see your eyeballs. And the children are like, what does that even mean? I'm like, it makes sense in my head. Have I seen your eyeballs today? It's your KPIs. It's a KPI as me as a parent. But what Matt was saying makes sense. And this is the ground level of how you run a business. Even if you aren't running a business, even if you're running a household, you can relate to this, as we all do some form of this. We have checks and balances. We have deposits and withdrawals. We have things that you can track and measure. And you have to do this to stay relevant and also to ensure that food gets on the table. But I use it in a relational sense too. Like, what are those checks and balances? It's not necessarily a he said, she said, but as a partner, am I depositing into his love tank? So when it comes time to withdraw, is there funds in the account? Ow.
See,
I love making you blush. That's my favorite thing.
That's probably the best part about us not being really that scripted. We have an outline of kind of what we want to talk about.
Just watching your face like, what the hell is she about to say?
Well, here I am trying to relate this to a business conversation, and she goes somewhere separate. And I'm like, all right, now I got to get this back on track for what my next point was going to be. And I can do that. But that's one of the great things about not being so scripted, I think.
It's one of the great things about that makes you you. You can just get right back on track.
So the reason, right back on track, that you're not seeing results in other areas of your life is because you don't treat it like you treat your business. In business, we measure, we adjust. We measure, we adjust, we track, and you're not doing those things in other areas of your life. When we talk to a client, we always tell them, yeah, we're going to have some checks and balances. We're going to be measuring things, and we're going to follow certain methods that work. Most people, I think everyone listening, and I would say most people understand the importance it comes to when you're lifting weights to track that. I see people in the gym all the time tracking that, putting the numbers in their phone, doing it on a piece of paper, but people are tracking that, and some people are doing it mentally, but you're tracking what you're doing and assessing, are you getting better each week? Whether it's more reps, more weight, whatever it is. And most people understand this when it comes to sleep as well. They're thinking, did I get 6-7 hours of sleep last night? Did I get 5 hours? Did I get 8? Where was I at? I think most people understand tracking that is probably pretty important as well. And I think even most people understand tracking steps. That's probably one even bigger in today's society. Everyone's talking about getting steps. People understand tracking those steps, get to 10,000. We got to do that stuff. And I think even most people understand tracking water. They may not specifically track it, but they certainly know when they haven't had enough water consumption. The key part that people are leaving out is they're not tracking their food. And I'm going to be super honest with you. The first few weeks of doing this, it's going to be a little time consuming. You just got to figure it out. Now, if you have a coach, they're going to help you, but even then, it's still a little time consuming. It's a little weird trying to figure it out. And you're probably going to ask after that first 2 or 3 days, am I going to have to do this the rest of my life? And that's just real honest about food tracking that goes along with that.
Yeah. But at the same time, no matter where you're listening to us, I want you to sit back and I want you to think back. You know, if you're at the gym, if you're in the car, if you're walking the dog, just kind of dial it back a few. Think way back when you first started tracking numbers, either in your job or business. And give an honest look back, because you may have to go way back. This is 20 years back for me. First, like fresh out of the gates, with my fashion degree and my fitness business. Do you remember when you first started, you were like, my God, where do I even go to get this information? What should I even track? Why do I need somebody's birthday? That makes no sense. Do you remember that comment? Yeah, I did that. It's okay, I'll admit it. Does this, like tracking this, does that actually move the needle? Or am I just tracking this to fill a sheet? Do I need to do this every day, every week, every month? But the more repetition that you created, the more data that you had. And the more data that you had, then you could analyze and adjust. And after a little time, it became pretty natural. And you started seeing how you could actually affect change by measuring and then adapting.
It's the exact same thing with food. That's why we're drawing this parallel. And I've already told you it's going to be a little bit weird at first. You can trust me when I'm being upfront and saying, yeah, it's going to be a little bit weird. But it's just like when you started doing business, when Jen just explained that. My head went back to, I thought I knew a lot about business until I didn't understand cash flows, and I'm like, where are all these numbers coming from? Where are they going out? Oh my God, is this going to be like this all the time? Everything she just said, I related right back to that 20 years ago when we went into business. And just like business, you're going to realize that there's stages where you track. Sometimes you track everything, and sometimes you can let things slide a little bit. There may be months that you really don't need to look at cash flow so closely because it's your busy months and you got so much cash coming in, way more than your expenses. You're not really concerned about that. It's the same thing with fitness. Once you get into a maintenance mode, The same thing holds true. I mean, for me and I know for Jen, when we hit the summertime, we're really just eyeballing protein. We're not really worrying about so much about carbs or fats. It's that season of when all that cash is coming in. It's the same thing. The work and effort that we put into it. Now we're just eyeballing protein. So we're not literally having to measure things and worry about things every day. It's such a great parallel in business that you can see this, because the reason you're not getting results is because you're not treating other areas of your life just like you do business every day.
Yeah. And I said it before, I'll say it again. This same mentality goes for your relationships as well as your mental health. I have KPIs with my mental health. When was the last time I sat out in the sun? And if there's a good stretch of days that I haven't seen the sun, I go find a sun. Whether that's sitting in a tanning bed or an artificial light or some red light therapy, there are some KPIs that you have to do for your own mental health. And it's so funny. It's just like watering plants, right? Those plants have KPIs, right? They know they need water and sunlight every single day. But when you start to track those things and those measurements in some way to determine if you are on course or not, you can quickly make adjustments once you know the data. And I want to share, it just happened today. I had a client and she's maybe in the middle of her second week with me. So her body's still really, really, really trying to adapt and understand and anticipate what needs to happen. So those first 10 to 14 days, the weight will fluctuate a little. This is somebody that hadn't been lifting this heavy in a while.
They probably weren't tracking their foods either.
Wasn't tracking food very well. Wasn't tracking sleep. And really wasn't putting any effort into rest management. And so she's noticed her weight go up and down considerably. But because we have our clients measure their food, record their food, record their sleep, record their weight, I have data that I can show. And I opened up her calendar and I said, look, you lifted 4 days ago, 2 days in a row, and then you took a rest. And then that very next day after the rest, your weight dropped. Today it's back up because you lifted yesterday and today. You're going to take another rest day tomorrow. We can expect that weight to drop again on Saturday. So I can immediately show her, because you didn't value rest, when you started to go again, your body's like, whoa. And then you rest and your body's like, ah. You can probably put the sound effects with it too.
It's all about tracking the data, doing what you do in business, doing it in your life.
Data. KPIs, baby.
Here's where the rubber meets the road. This is why this is so important. Obviously, we talk about, making sure that you treat your body the same way you should be treating it better than you treat your business. But here's where it really, really affects you. If you don't do this, time is going to go by and you're going to wonder what happened. Just like in business, if you don't track the numbers, time is going to fly by. At the end of the year, you're going to wonder what happened. It's the same thing in life. I mean, look at where we're at right now. You're like, holy cow, what happened? It's May. I had all these goals 4 or 5 months ago to do in fitness, and now all I'm doing is I'm running around to go to all the ballparks with the kids, and we're getting ready to hit the summer already. And when was the last time we had sex? And I'm stressed, and all these things are going on because you didn't slow down to track it at the beginning of the year. But that's okay, because you can start doing that right now. When you start tracking those things, not just the food, but I go back to the comment about why you're stressed. Checking your mental health. When was the last time we had sex? Are you checking your relationship health? Are you tracking and measuring those things? It doesn't have to be this really hard thing. Like we've already said, it takes a couple weeks to get used to doing this, and then it just becomes secondhand, but your life becomes much better. You can start doing this and put a plan in place to fix these areas.
I love that. Here's the real secret to all of this. Truthfully, when you have the motivation and the discipline and the desire, we've talked about the desire. If you have that desire around your end goal to do this with your food, it will transcend to every area of your life. Every area of your life. Do you remember how fast your external world accelerated the minute you got a hold of your food? not me measuring your food, right?
Yep.
Like it was like, boom, I'm an adult. Boom, like hockey stick. You're flat out going to get results, which will naturally change everything. But because you're tracking your internal input, you're measuring that internal input with intention, you start paying attention to other things at that granular level. It makes it so much more simple. And the things that you make important begin to change. And you start to see how you can actually do things you never thought were possible by simply just paying attention to them, measuring them, and then adjust as needed.
I love it. You brought up that things that were never thought was possible. Mm-hmm. If you've listened to our previous episodes, that touching the impossible, that's where that comes from, doing these little things. But I want to go back to how we opened up this episode, and I think this will make more sense now that we've walked through the business examples of relating that to why you should be tracking your foods and why you should be tracking other areas of your life. See, fitness is such a base for everything in your life, which is why we say when you get this down, everything else becomes much more clear and much more effortless once you start tracking and making adjustments.
I love it. Guys, I hope this brought a little value to your day. Hopefully you are already tracking your food, because we are in pursuit of perfection and we only put good things inside our body. If this hit, make sure you tag us in your Insta stories, give us a 5-star review, share it with somebody you think will find value. That's the only way our podcast grows. And for those that have been sharing, we thank you so much. We'll talk next time.